Hey everybody, Spriggshill here, and we have ourselves another 1v1. We have in the east side of the map, Pripyat River, in the blue, Armacombat, who is playing the Germans. In the red, playing as the Soviets spawning on the west side of the map, we have Munkirz. So, pretty standard opening. Cons first for the Russians, Grenadiers first for the Germans, and point capturing is taking place. The first one's gone down for the Germans and for the Russians already, and these next 2 points will go down for the Russians fairly quickly here. The German Grenadiers taking their time moving towards the middle, and the German pioneers are taking this top point close to this repair point, which may be useful later on in the map. We shall see. Another set of grenadiers come into play for the Germans as we wait to see what else comes in for the Russians as this top point goes down for the pioneers. Repair point is being taken by the engineers of the Russians, and the first point, or first star, is being taken by the cons of the Russians as another con squad comes in. Germans are bypassing this first star, looking like they're going to go towards the outpost, maybe or the North Star. We should shield, but we're going to see a bit of a fight here. I'd not hesitate here. There will be a fight. So the Germans have the high ground, but the Russians have the cover. And there's going to be a very good looking little fight here between Grenadiers and Cons. Grenadiers look like they've got the edge at this moment in time. The Cons have got their numbers. As another Grenadier squad comes into play, the Grenadiers lose a man there. And the Cons now have the advantage, even though they've just lost another man. But the Grenadiers are going to be reinforced by another set of Grenadiers, and I can only imagine that this Con squad's going to have to move away from this, as this Grenadier squad is now down to one man. I'd imagine they would want to retreat out of that. They don't want to get killed. Cons take another hit. And that Grenadier squad has been completely wiped out there by the Cons. That is a good trade, and these Cons must... Oh no, well they'll get wiped out as well. And basically what's happened is they've traded a Grenadier squad for a Con squad. There's going to be another fight here though between the next Grenadier squad and the Con squad that moves in, and that's going to be an interesting fight as well. The Germans do have an HMG squad coming in on the way. Here we go. No, that's a Grenadier squad, sorry. I thought that was the HMG squad that's just come in. Grenadiers taking damage, but the Cons have taken even more, and they will retreat out. So the Grenadiers have finally managed to get this ground. They will capture and then move towards the stars, I'd imagine. While this was all going on, the Russians have captured almost all of this southwesterly area of the map, including one point to the north, whereas the Germans have done not so much. They've taken the north side, most of it, and they are capturing this North Star. But at the moment, the Russians have their advantage up here. As the Germans move out, they don't bother taking that star. I can only imagine that he's going for some quick, easy kills here as the Grenadiers move up towards that Con squad, which will oorah out of there. Oorah out of there. HMG unit is sitting there doing nothing. While it's sitting there doing nothing, it could technically take that star, but it isn't. I'm slightly bemused by why that is not happening as the Grenadier squad is moving towards that North Star. A little bit of a fight here between Cons and Grenadiers. Grenadiers take some damage, and the Cons are going to win the day with that, but the Grenadiers are going to fall back and get a little bit of company as the mechanised company building comes down. But that conscript squad there has taken a position which puts some of the territory out of territory for the Germans, which means that they are getting very little points. They're not getting very much on the board whatsoever. Armour combat is to be honest, he's starting to suffer because he hasn't got enough points on the board. He needs to start getting some of these sectors, otherwise he is going to start to really struggle. He may still get the manpower, that's fair enough, but he won't get the ammunition and he won't get the fuel that he may need to bring in further people, further tanks and further manpower. Grenadiers come into play again, and they're going to see if they can engage this con squad, which has decided to visit this building while it's snowing, which is fair enough. The second star has been taken, and the third star is about to be taken for the Russians, and it's fair to say that the Russians have taken the lead here. They have pretty much over half of the map. They have the points, and the Germans are losing. They will be losing 3 points every 5 seconds. 2 Grenadiers squads here, both at low or only half health here, will engage the con squad, who's decided to stand back and maybe just let them come. As another con squad sits on this middle section here. This top star is now going to go down. Scout car in to play as this little bit of a battle here between cons and Grenadiers has been raging for the last minute or so. Nothing is happening here, so we'll move away. That point was neutralized but not taken by the Germans. They will move out and take this ammunition sector here, as the blizzard is 40 seconds coming. The scout car moves in. It hasn't got its upgrade, and it will sit on this next point. Panzer Grenadiers are coming into play as 2 scout cars, both with flame engineers, it would seem, are going to come in and provide some serious infantry damaging play here, especially against those Grenadiers, which I can only imagine are going to enjoy being warm here to a certain extent, and then not enjoy being warm, as this Grenadier squads look like they both are going to have to retreat out of here, as one gets completely toasted and the second could be destroyed here. This could be oh, that's brilliant. Those 2 scout cars with the engineers with the flames and have destroyed another 2 Grenadier units, which means that they are the Germans' armor combat is just at another disadvantage. He's lost 3 sets of Grenadiers, which is what, 250 manpower each, so that's 750 already that he's lost, purely by not retreating quickly enough. HMG comes into play in the middle here as the Germans take their star. Panzer Grenadiers. Also, Opel Blitz cargo truck is locking down that area, and it will start to get a little bit more resources. A scout car with 20mm upgrade is going to engage these engineers, and they're going to run out. That's a good idea from the engineers. And at the moment it's not even as even as I thought just from first glance it was. I mean, the Germans are taking back some of their positions. They're also losing some of their positions. They've lost this fuel area and are losing this ammo section, and they could, in all honesty, lose this middle star if they're not careful, and they are going to fall back, losing half of those Panzer Grenadiers and some of the HMG squad there. Pioneers are sitting on that south point, and I'm not sure why the Russians didn't take that point when they could then, as con squads are freezing here. And this con squad is also freezing. I don't know why they don't move towards that area. Scout car with the engineers and flames come in to try and take some of these Grenadiers out, and they will take some of them out completely. And a little bit of a bug there as that Grenadier unit decides to run away but not actually move their arms and legs, which is pretty cool. We have The scout car is still roaming about, and we have another Opel Blitz truck coming to play. Scout car will engage the conscripts and do a very good job and push them away. Do a nice little skid while they're at it. This star is going to go down for the Russians. They've got rifles on the field, which is going to help against that scout car, I feel. As the Russian scout car will be taken out, and this German scout car could be worth its weight in gold to begin with in this early stages of this game. So the Germans are going to take this point, take back this point. Panzer Grenadiers, they're going to fend off the German counterattack by those rifles. As those rifles go away, the conscripts are going to let this point be because they have won. I don't know why they still haven't taken that North Star. They've had the time to do so, but they've decided against it. The points are going down for the Russians, for the Germans at the moment. They are nearly 200 points down on the Russians. But the Germans are slowly taking some of their areas out, and pretty much all the Russians have gone back to the spawn as the Tankovoy battalion command comes into play. The Germans haven't gotten to battle phase 2 yet. They may want to think about that soon as a half-track comes into play. That is getting the flame upgrade almost as soon as it comes onto the field, and the Grenadiers are going to move to the north. Another set of Grenadiers taking this field sector back, and imagine they're going to move towards this North Star. Infantry push through the middle of the map to the south, looking like they're going to move southeast towards this fuel depot that's just been taken by these pioneers. There's a little bit of forces piling up in the middle here on this star. Grenadiers are getting reinforced by that half track as it gets its flame upgrade, and the Grenadiers are going to be under attack here from the engineers in a second. They've got the upgrade, but I don't think they're going to get very far here. In fact, they will. They walk all the way up to the Grenadiers, and I'd imagine those Grenadiers are going to be a bit toasty after this. Which they are, but the scout car is going to come in, and it's going to do a little bit of damage against those engineers, and those engineers are going to fall away. In the meantime, rifles are getting pinned down by the HMG unit and will be taken out very nicely by that half-track, who will run into an AT grenade and will take some damage to its, a lot of damage to its engine, as rifles come in and do a little bit of damage with their anti-tank rifles. Anti-vehicle rifles, should I say. This HMG is doing a really good job of pinning down some of this infantry as the rifles move in. And I can only think the rifles will try and put some kind of grenade down, but they're pinned and they're going to have to fall back. We've got a Pak 40 on the field, as we've got a T-34 coming in on for the Russians, and there may be another little battle here between the Russians and the Germans in this middle star. As the little bit of a Grenadier flank here from the north comes in. Grenadiers get their first point of veterancy, a second point of veterancy for another set of Grenadiers, but they are losing men unfortunately from this con squad down at the bottom here. But the T-34 has been neutralised at the moment by its engine being damaged quite badly, and the Germans will have to fall back somewhat. But this HMG's done a very good job of pinning down those infantry, allowing those infantry to not be able to do what they were sent to do, and that was to take this position. Pak 40 is offering anti-tank support, which is always useful, especially if that wants to decide to come across that little bridge there, which is never good. So, battle phase 2 is finally going down for the Germans. They will obviously want to build their next building, and as they start it almost straight away, the support corps. The Russians, on the other hand, will take this next point and stop the Opel Blitz cargo truck from locking down the area, and could be quite decisive that, as the Russians finally take this North Star and start the points falling again for the Germans. as a blizzard is on its way, which is never fun, especially for this HMG squad which is sitting out in the open. Russians are pushing up north here. They want to get back this fuel and this ammunition sector. And although this flame half-track is doing a decent job of fending off, it is in serious state of health, and it will need to be repaired as the HMG squad mows down those retreating engineers. Cons come into play here. They will hopefully, or you would have thought they may get right round the side of the HMG's arc, but I don't think they will. I think they'll be pinned before they have a chance, and they will have to retreat away from that as the Grenadiers come back into play. They haven't got their upgrades either, the MGs, which would be very useful, I'd imagine, once they get into position. All three of those squads are getting cold now. The two are going to head towards the fire, but that HMG squad, if it's not careful, will start to suffer some damage as finally the Russians take the fuel and ammunition sector that they were always wanting to get. Cons are pinned down again and they will retreat out, but that squad is taking some heat, some cold damage, and will have a fireplace right next to them. You may think that that fire might be too close to the HMG, but in this game any heat is a good heat when it's this cold. Little fable for you to remember there. The same can't be said for these Grenadiers who are actually freezing to death right now. They'd love a bit of flame, but unfortunately all they're getting is tank fire and anti-tank fire and rifle fire, and in a second PPSH fire. Oh, and also a grenade just to help, as both Grenadier squads could be taken out. One is taken out, the other will probably get away. No, it won't. It'll be completely destroyed. I count that's 5 Grenadier squads completely destroyed in this game so far, as the Russians are just completely dominating so far in this game. The Russians will try and take this middle point. Will do a decent job of taking this Pack 30 out, I'd imagine, but this half-track may have something to say about this if it's not utilised. If it's going to sit there and do nothing, then there's no point. But that engineer squad did a good job there of doing a little bit of damage, but the rest of the Russians are going to try and come here and take this Pack 40 out. That HMG unit's been turned around to face these infantry, and while that's happened, the cons and the engineers will come in and flank and take that out. Well played there by the Russians to use that fight the way they did. The Germans, on the other hand, have their Panzer IV out in the field, and I'm assuming that this T-34 will go down in a second. It does. This other T-34, which snuck onto the field but I didn't see, will do a little bit of damage to the to the Panzer IV, sorry, and there'll be a little bit of a trade of blows here, as generally the Panzer IV will probably win in this battle. And it may even have a little bit of a chase down here, maybe even use the blitz function to get close. I'm surprised it hasn't taken the MG yet. Anyway, this third star is going down for the Russians. The Germans are now almost halfway through their points, and they will be close to halfway through their points in a second as that T-34 is destroyed by the Panzer IV. That's well played by the Panzer IV, and it may want to just fall back slightly and get a little bit of a repair and then come back into the field. Or it may just want to come straight back into battle and do as much damage as possible, especially against... Wow, that was a great shot. A shot comes in for the Panzer IV there and takes out a whole MG team. Very well played. Cons do a bit of damage with the AT grenade, take out the Panzer IV's engine, or damages it enough for it to be able to become very, very, very stationary, as it were. This star is going to be taken now for the Germans as they slowly push back forward with Grenadiers and Panzer IVs. Cons will, on the other hand, though, take this northerly point here, which will give them a little bit more of a resource And the Germans decide to completely bypass that star and will go for the middle section. The T-34 will come in and do some damage against Grenadiers, but it's going to hope to try and get towards this T-34, which is being engaged by a con squad. The Panzer IV is in serious danger here of being taken out if it's not careful. Flame tank comes in and dispatches those con squads, but these set of rifles and this T-34 may do some damage against this tank. This half track is going to deal with this infantry, and the Grenadiers are going to come in from behind, do a little bit more damage to this T-34. And the Panzer IV has managed to survive through all that, through the attack of the rifles and the attack of the T-34, and has come out on the other side with another point of veterancy, which adds their little skirt there. And obviously it's in dire straits. It needs to be fixed by this Pioneer squad. Rifles are being engaged here by two sets of infantry, two sets of Grenadiers and the half track with flame, and will have to retreat out. Pioneers or engineers with flame in the middle, but this half track is going to toast them. And there we go, toasty toasty engineers, and a little bit of artillery just for the sake of it. Oh no, sorry, it's a strafing one. Panzer IV here is being repaired nicely. The Germans have their star back, but they are still losing points. They're down past 200 points now, which means that it's not going to be very long before I sense the Russians will win this game. But the Germans are going to push up now and see what they can do against the Russian onslaught, which is at the moment is stalled. They're building the mechanized armor company, which is going to bring in maybe the Su-85 or maybe special command units, which if we just check, there is no special command units. Maybe get the artillery up in place, but I'd imagine they just bring an Su-85 into play to deal with this Panzer IV. Grenadiers are taking this North Star now, and they're moving also out to these next points, the fuel depot and this next point here, which will allow them to link these up. But two sets of cons here are going to engage this Grenadier squad, and this half track may want to come back into play here, as it does. Looks like another Panzer IV's come onto the field over in this direction here. It still hasn't got its upgrade. Neither does this for the MG42, which would be very useful, but this fight here is turned against the Germans, and the half-track has taken a little bit of damage, and the con squad has got away with taking out some of the infantry that was there, and will take this North Star back. Rifles come into play here. Taking out this half-track would be a very big blow for the Germans. And with these rifles, they may well do so, and they do. They do a good bit of damage. Those anti-material rifles, I'd call them, technically big caliber armor-piercing rounds, PTRS sort of deal. Lots of infantry here engaged in these three sets of Grenadiers. Grenadiers are taking some damage though, as another blizzard comes into play for the map. Strafing run for the Germans comes into play, but both these con squads are on the ground hitting the dirt and will avoid a lot of the fire that may come into them. Yeah, they do. A lot more than they would normally do if they were stood up. Grenadiers are engaging still, but they are low on health, those Grenadiers, and they will fall back. The second group are halfway down their health as another strafing run does a little bit more damage this time. One squad will run away, and a rifle grenade does a little bit of damage there, but a second rifle grenade and the strafing run will do a little bit more damage, and those cons will have to retreat out of here as rifles attack this last star, do no damage to the tanks, and will retreat out. T-34 76 is on the field again for the Russians as it moves north, and an artillery strike in the centre here, or a plane strike should I say. Yes, a plane strike. It is a strafing run along that point, stopping it from being taken by the Grenadiers. Engineers look like they're moving towards this fuel depot. This 234 might have something to say about those grenadiers engaging, and they will run off. They will decide to leave. Panzer Grenadiers on the field here will try and move into this sector, but it looks like that plane is doing some serious strafing runs and won't allow them to move as the tanks move forward here for the Germans. At the moment the Russians have only got one T-34 on the field, and that will not do against these two Panzer IVs, especially this Panzer IV, which has two veterancy stars, which means it's got the blitzkrieg ability and it also has the reduced damage, i.e. the skirts. Freezing infantry though is always a downside to the blizzard, and they are suffering, these Panzer Grenadiers, and you may see them lose a little bit of health in a minute if they are not careful. Russians have taken this fuel depot, which is always nice for the Russians, and they may want to start to think about bringing in something a little bit more heavier than the T-34, maybe an Su-85, sorry. The 85 represents its gun caliber, I believe, and it is a tank destroyer rather than an assault gun, I think. Some people may call it, but I think it's definitely a tank destroyer. T-34 is sitting here doing nothing at the moment. It may have something to do when this Panzer Grenadier unit steps up and takes out some of their infantry with T-34's first shot, takes out two infantry in fact, and they may have to retreat out. And in fact they won't, they'll stay around and see if they can take this point. And some action in the centre here again. We've got 3 Grenadier units and 1 Panzer Grenadier unit, so we're going to start to engage this Con squad in the middle. 2 rifle groups are going to move towards this North Star, and it looks like these 2 Panzer IVs are not going to do anything at the moment, or they may start to engage now as the Cons move away from this middle section. Rifles are currently taking a little bit of fire here from the Grenadiers. The Grenadiers are going to run into a little bit of flame, but those Panzer IVs are going to come in right behind them here, and they're going to do some serious damage, I think, to the rifles, as the Grenadiers and the Panzer IVs do some knock out one of the rifles completely, and they'll look towards trying to get rid of these engineers and trying to get rid of these other rifles. The rifles retreat out, and so do the engineers. So let's just double check on what is building. We have finally the Su-85, which I thought they'd want to bring out. That'll move in, I'm assuming, with the T-34. And this North Star is going to go down for the Germans, which means they are finally going to stop the flow of points, which has stopped at 119 for the Germans. So the Russians here are slowly being pegged back. The Germans are doing a good bit of damage here to some of the areas, but the Russians seem to be able to control the map a lot better. And I think this onslaught from the Germans is not going to last very long, especially when this Su-85 comes into play against these Panzer IVs. All it needs is 1 or 2 really good hits, and the Panzer IV could be in a lot of trouble. This north point here is being taken for the Russians. The Germans are getting this point here back for them, so they can get this fuel and the ammunition point back into play. But this Russian has stopped and taken is not on a word. The Su-85 comes into play, but it's taken some serious damage here from these Panzer IVs and this Grenadier unit, and it could be that we lose the Su-85 here before it does any serious damage. And it looks like it will do. I mean, it's gone, completely gone, and this T-34 is also going the same route if it cannot get out of here. That was a seriously bad engagement there from the Su-85. We missed a little bit of it because I was off going around doing some other points, but that was some bad play there on the Russian side of things, and the momentum is still in the Russian favour because they have the points on the board and they have the infantry to do a little bit of damage to the Germans, but the Germans have the panzers, and if they're not careful, these panzers may not be useful at the moment. They may take out the infantry, and they may take out the other tanks for the Russians, but if they can't control and hold these points from the Russians, then this game could be over very soon. Germans retaking this ammunition point up at the top, and a little engagement here between cons and grenadiers in this section here. North Star is being taken for the Russians, and a little bit of engagement there from the rifles to the grenadiers, but those cons are going to have to retreat out, because those grenadiers with those 2 stars, they do a little bit more damage and a little bit more defensive capabilities as they start to neutralize that East Star. Rifles are taking this close point here for the Russians, and at the moment the Russians still control a good piece of this map, and the Germans are now less than 100 points, and they'll need to start moving their infantry, which is what they're doing at the moment, towards the middle. They've got another Panzer Grenadier unit coming into play, and the rifles are going to combine here to try and take out this Grenadier squad, but it may be a little too late for those Grenadiers, because although this next set of Grenadiers are coming in, they may not be able to do as much damage as they hoped against these 2 rifle squads. Bird of Strafing Run looks like it's coming in here for the Germans, and they're going to do a little bit of damage against these rifles. They are going to pin them down and let those Grenadiers and the Panzer Grenadiers come in and do some serious damage, and they're going to retreat out. Wise decision there by the Russians. Another set of rifles is going to engage these Panzer Grenadiers. And these Panzer Grenadiers are probably not going to win out too much, but a grenade goes down and will take out one of the... Well, it's now taken 2 of the rifles out without any losses from the Grenadiers so far. Another grenade comes down, and that will take out one of those Panzer Grenadiers. In the meantime, the Grenadiers from the previous assault will move in towards this North Star and will start to take this North Star as it engages those rifles, which will unfortunately run away for the Russians. Now, we have a Tiger tank ability available here, and they will bring it in. This could be a very well-timed move from the Germans here. They have 2 of the stars. They are neutralizing their third star, sorry. And in all honesty, this could be a serious good comeback from the Germans. They may have enough here to force this Russian to give up, to say, GG, there's not enough here, I'm going to have to run off. And this Russian's Su-85 is going to be down. It's not got anything here. It's just been completely swallowed up by these Panzer Force. Goodbye. And when the Russians, when the Russians see this Tiger, this replay will be called straight away. Watch this. Hey, I can see a Tiger there. What's that? Tiger? Oh shit. Well, I've got nothing to do against a Tiger, and I'm going to say good game, bye-bye. And Munkirz, although had pretty much the whole of the map, has basically fallen to the might of the German armour, and will GG this, almost certainly GG this. Can't really say any more than that. The Russians have 69, sorry, the Germans have 69 points. And there was the GG. You don't actually see it, but technically there it was. So, analysis here, folks. The Russians had control of pretty much almost all of the map at one point. The only problem is they didn't have all the stars. Now, there were some times when they had forgot to take this star here, or they'd forgot to take the North Star here, and they'd only left it neutralized. Now, if they had all 3 stars for all the period of time they were on top, they would have probably got a lot closer to a victory here. Now, the problem for the Russians was when they lost those 2 T-34s, they realised that they were going to be in some trouble, and they tried to bring in the Su-85, and they weren't. The Su-85, the first one, was definitely not utilised well enough. The second one ran into superior tanks, and it had no chance really against the two Panzer IVs when they were in that kind of strategic move. What went right for the Germans was nothing to begin with. It was all Russian, and then the Germans brought in their first Panzer IV, and that kind of made all the difference really. They started to be able to move around the map and take some of the points which they normally wouldn't be able to control and hold. The half-track, which was destroyed in the end, unfortunately, the flame half-track did a really good job at pushing back this infantry that was moving across by the Russians. There was also an HMG unit which did also a very good job of pushing them back, which is here, but it's been abandoned, unfortunately. The final straw really was a Tiger. It didn't do anything really. It came in, killed a couple of infantry, and as soon as the Russians saw that they had nothing left, it was game over. As you can see, the Russians have nothing on the board. They have a little bit of manpower, but they have nothing to build with. So anyway, that was the 1v1 between Armacombat and Munkirz. Armacombat obviously went through with a victory. Very decent result there for him. Munkirz will be a little bit distraught at the fact that he controlled the whole map, pretty much the whole of the game, and unfortunately lost. Anyway, great game, enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.